Hey guys, so I'm gonna do a review of Persepolis today, and there's no way I'm going to be able to say her name, so I'm just gonna show it to you. Hopefully you can read it. If you can't, when I look at this video, I'll write it down below so that you can see it. It is a graphic novel. I don't know if you can see that, yeah. This was recommended to me by one of my professors. I took gender studies with her and Women's Writers of the World, and this was one of the books that she talked about in Women's Writers of the World that we didn't actually read, but she said it was worth picking up. And when Borders was going out of business, I picked myself up a copy because it was on sale. So I decided that I would just not read it. I had some time and thought I would give it a chance. And so this is actually her memoirs, done in graphic novel form. This is the first book out of, I think, 3 of them. This is normally the one you hear people talk about when they talk about it, but I know there's definitely a second one, and I believe there's a third, and now you can buy the complete edition. It's got a blue cover, and it has all of it in one. But this one goes through her life between ages 10 and 14. She grew up in Iran. This was in the early 80s, and there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of revolutionaries and a lot of war and stuff like that. So she comes from a very, I guess, liberal family. They don't necessarily follow the Islamic regime, which takes control about halfway through. And they have a lot of issues with the wearing of the veil and just things like that they don't necessarily agree with. And it goes through how she struggles being different and how she struggles with the political things that she doesn't agree with, and more than that, how she struggles with not quite understanding what is going on, because she is, for most of this, fairly young. I mean, between 10 and 14, she doesn't have a full grasp over what's going on, and there are points where family members come back from being in prison and being tortured, and just the ignorance she had to some of the issues purely because of her age. And so I won't really go into a lot of detail because really that's the plot of it, is her growing up and finding out about life. Let me go into my actual review of it. And this is totally my fault, but I do not know a whole lot about Iran's history, and that really made this a little difficult for me because she gives you brief overviews over certain things, but it's not a whole lot of detail, and I feel like I would have benefited from knowing a little bit more about Iran's actual history and about what is going on during this time period and about the issues that she's talking about. And I'm not trying to bash the way that she describes it, because she does a great job for what she has, but it just wasn't necessarily enough, and I think she wrote it from the perspective of someone who knew what was going on and expected people who were going to read what she wrote to be aware of those issues, which I am not. That's one thing that I have to say about it, is just I feel like if I had researched a little bit more about the time period in Iran and about the history of Iran, it would have benefited me. But other than that, I think this was phenomenal. One of the big things that I loved about it was that she was willing to admit her naivety about life itself. Like, there are more than one instances throughout this book where she acknowledges the fact that she didn't know what was going on. A big one for me was when, and she was 14 I think at this point, when her family told her they were really worried about her getting arrested because of how outspoken she was. Purely because of the fact that in Iran during this time period, and I don't know if it's still the case, you cannot kill a virgin woman. And so if she was to be executed, which more than likely she would have been had she been arrested, they would have married her off and had someone take her virginity from her and then execute her after that. And her parents explained this to her, and just the shock and the horror of, oh my god, how could I not know this? But then at the same time, she's only 14. There's no reason she should know that. And there are instances in the younger sections of it where she's 10 or so, just people explaining things to her that really a 10-year-old should never have to hear about, but from the life she lived, she needed to know it, and just how crazy it was. And another thing that I think she did really well is in the earlier sections, there was a lot of, they're teaching one thing in the school she's going to, but then her parents are preaching another thing, and her trying to struggle with figuring out, well, how can this teacher be telling me a lie, but then my parents aren't going to lie to me either, and her struggling with what is the real truth. And I think one of the great things is that she read and she did her own research, and even at a very young age she took in every bit of knowledge she could find just to come up with her own opinion. I think that's great. I think that this was a fabulously done graphic novel, and I do like the fact that it's only in black and white. Like, that is appealing to me. I think it's very simplistic, but not overly simplistic. I think it's fabulously done, and I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm going to suggest it to you. So pick a copy up if you ever get the chance. I don't know how many of you actually read graphic novels, but I love them. I think they're fabulous, and I would not read them 24/7. I do love actual written books more, but I think a graphic novel is a great addition to the collection, and I think you should give it a try, and this is a good one to start with if you've never read a graphic novel. So I'll see you later, guys.